Our next speaker is Luz Rivas from DIY Girls, and which she actually founded in 2011. She has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from MIT, and welcome.
Thank you. So a little bit about when I started DIY Girls. I started it because I was excited that reality is cool again, right? And as a former hardware engineer, I've always liked making physical products. And I always felt, oh, people don't consider this part of technology, at least in education. And so I was so excited that I went back to my elementary school. They gave me a classroom, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this a classroom maker space for girls and offer a program for them. So I started it, and when I got around to starting it, I had $200. The classroom didn't have any Wi-Fi. It looked the same as when I was there in 1983. And we didn't have enough chairs. And so I had to figure out, okay, so what am I gonna do, right? And what I did have was 32 girls that signed up and were coming every day, right? And so I went through my apartment, looked for everything I had. I had supported the Makey Makey Kickstarter, so I had one. I found like old electronics components. People gave me scraps of wood. I bought this cheap soldering iron that was only $5. Things like that. So I just scrounged what I had and then just started making projects with the girls, which was not what I had envisioned originally. I thought I'd have computers and machines and, I want to make this a true innovative makerspace. But the reality was that I couldn't, but I had to start, right? And so that's exactly what I did. And we just kind of, every week, just whatever I could buy or get is what I did with the girls. Like I said, I just was getting these recycled materials, going to the electronic surplus store, which there's a great one here in LA. I found this old arcade joystick that the girls ended up making and connecting it to make their own games. And what I realized, because I kept thinking, I'm just doing this temporarily until I get money to buy these cool things, right? But what I realized is this is what was innovative, is that we hardly had anything, but we were still creating these exciting and great projects that the girls were really excited about too, right? And what was even better was that they were relating it to things that they see in their home, So they're like, oh, my dad uses this in the garden, So PVC pipe wasn't just for these marshmallow shooters or whatever's on Make Magazine, right? It was actually real, right? It was like, we use this at home. I see my dad do this. My uncle works in construction, and he knows how to do this. And everything they made, since it was so cheap, they took home. And so they were sharing it with family members. And I had parents coming in, too, saying, oh, wow, I know how to do that, too. I didn't know this was part of technology, or engineering. There's something that I can share with my kids. I can teach them. And the community that I started the program, which is where I grew up, most of us are Mexican immigrants. Parents didn't go to college. Not all of them speak English. They work in factories and construction. There's a lot of the mothers are seamstresses. So when we started doing e-textiles, they were excited because the girls started taking home conductive thread, and the moms were like, well, I know how to sew, And so then the girls were teaching their moms about the electronic stuff, like they say. And so it just became like, we don't need all of this fancy technologies to still run a makerspace, right? Or whatever you want to call it in the schools. And I think when I saw the topic of these talks, I realized that what I think is state of the art of this whole movement, of making physical projects and makerspaces, is that it's not state of the art, right? Or doesn't have to be state of the art as we've thought of it before, right? So, and I had a hard time when people were coming to evaluate, potential funders. They're expecting, oh, well, you went to MIT and you went to Harvard. Oh, this space must be amazing, right? You must press buttons and it must, it's like everything's automatic. I'm sure you have the latest computers. And they'd walk in and they would just see girls making things with cheap electronic components. We finally got some really cheap computers. We didn't have Wi-Fi, so I had to download Scratch, and only could use technology that you can actually download to a computer, right? I couldn't use Tinkercad or anything that was web-based, even though I really wanted to. And so, this is an example. It just looks like a regular classroom, and it is. This is LAUSD, where this actually happens to be my elementary school, one of my elementary school classrooms, and we just kind of painted it. But what I think is happening is like, look, the girls are making things, and we don't have to worry about budgets and having everything in place to get started, right? You don't need that. And I think as in education, we talk about scale and, teachers are intimidated, they don't want to do this. But what we need to be communicating is that you don't need much to be doing this, right? And so, I think that when we think of innovation, we need to see it as what's actually, what are the girls making? What can kids make? And what can we do with less, right? And that's kind of a perspective that we need to be looking at when we see these spaces and not expecting fancy, laser cutters or anything else necessarily. And that's what I'm very excited about, because that really means that it opens up access for more people, more teachers to do this every day, and for it to really scale, right, without requiring huge investments of money. Okay, so just that's my message. We can be just innovative regardless of whatever is stopping us, and that's what I've learned a lot from my experience. Okay, thank you.